Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here, as always, I'm my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. Coming off of our first two-part episode 300, part 1 and part 2 just dropped the last couple of weeks. We were planning on doing it in one, and we just had so many things and testimonies to share, and just the conversation just kind of took on a life of its own. So we broke it up into two, so it's more digestible, and you don't have to hear us droning on for 90 minutes. So hopefully it'll keep you engaged and encouraged and excited to continue adapting a fasting lifestyle. But coming out of that, in true fashion, we want to dive into a listener Q&A. So we're going to be going over some of the questions that have been submitted by you, the listener. So thank you for doing that. And we're going to go over those in just a minute. If you are new to the podcast, I definitely highly recommend going back and listening to episode 0 and episode 1. If you want to know more about how fasting transformed my life, Tommy's life, why we do what we do week in and week out, in 30 minutes, you can get a picture of why we do what we do and why we're so passionate about it. And if you're also new, then go back and listen to episode 300, because that's going to kind of give you a recap of what we've done over the last 5 years, and most importantly, why we do it for you, the listener, to once and for all get off the diet roller coaster, get off the weight regain train, work on those foundational lifestyle habits and mindset, food relationships, and most importantly, how we use fasting to do so and make it that much easier and more sustainable. So, Tommy, as we dive in to today's episode, I want to give a shout out to the OGs, the people that have been with us on this journey. And we have someone here, Mendelovich, I think is the way to pronounce it. This is from Mendelovich is the username. I adore this podcast. Every week I learn so much. Feel so inspired and motivated to achieve optimal health. I'm blown away by the kindness, wisdom, and depth of research done by you and I. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for listening in, because that is the epitome of why we do what we do. So Tommy, let's get into it. Coming off of episode 300.
Yeah,
we are rounding the corner on the holiday season. The spooky Halloween candy is around the corner. The pre-Thanksgiving 7-day Master Your Fasting Challenge is perfectly placed right before Thanksgiving. That bleeds into Christmas and into New Year's, and then you're looking at January 2026 going, oh, all right, I'm here. So we are right around the corner of the last quarter of 2025. So we're going to do a listener Q&A today and really talk about some of the big themes or things, rocks or boulders that we put in place first in our coaching and in our challenges, and why we have our resources. They're all designed to shift the focus away from that diet mindset and really focus on a sustainable lifestyle that works for you, because every one of our lives is a little bit different in terms of the day-to-day stressors and sleep and work and kids and food relationships and skeletons in the closet from our previous failed weight loss attempts and blood work and conversations with your providers and yearly, and life insurance premiums and all the stuff that comes with being at a healthy weight that then brings health and longevity. So when we look at this big picture, we picked out the questions that were submitted today because we really feel like they apply to some of the most repeatable or biggest themes that we see in really the sustainability of adapting fasting as the vehicle to get you the weight loss and ultimately the health that you truly deserve.
Yeah, I think whenever we have an eye towards the end goal, I think that's really, really important, because we're going to be using the same tools during fat loss as during maintenance, but we're going to adapt them into that, right? And we have to have an eye towards that adaptation as we go through the fat loss process. Otherwise, it's going to feel like an on-off switch, and that leads to weight regain over time. That leads to reversion back to previous habits rather than feeling like I'm already building the next new version of myself for as I get into my maintenance mode. So as we get into the questions here, I think keeping that in mind is a really big point, and that's where a lot of these questions kind of come from. It's kind of how do I kind of think about this in the right way so that I can focus on fat loss when that's the goal, but also so that I don't feel like maintenance as a whole is a whole different thing altogether. Because really we should be thinking about that as a continuum rather than one race ends and then a new race begins, right?
Yep. So we're going to start with that conversation today of when you step on the scale and you see your lowest weight yet. Oh, what does the mind do? What should the strategy be? We're going to talk about supplementation and taking it on fasting versus non-fasting days. We're going to talk about post-meal blood sugar, looking at what's the use of why do we recommend walking post-meal, and what can you expect to see if you are tracking your blood sugar with a CGM or a Keto Mojo. We're also going to talk about the dreaded plateau, or when you start fasting and you see some momentum and then the scale stalls. And then we'll also talk about, kind of an OMAD strategy and what that looks like and how we're going to kind of strategize what your day-to-day is in terms of your action plan. But I want to start today with that concept of why diets are failing. And this is a shout out to The Fat Loss Forever by Dr. Lane Norton and Peter Baker. This quote's attributed to Sohee Lee, and it says, if you can't see yourself sticking to your diet, now I just want you to replace the word diet with lifestyle, because that's what we truly focus on here at Fasting for Life, is that lifestyle component. If you can't see yourself sticking to it for 1 year from now, you need to rethink your strategy. If you don't like the way you eat or fast, you won't stick to it for long. And it'll only be a matter of time before you jump ship and end up regaining all the weight. So,
Wow.
when we look at this, I want to start with Monica's question. And this is a great question. So, she says, when I step on the scale and see my lowest weight yet, I immediately feel excited, more motivated, and more confident to continue forward. Great. I think to myself, this is it. I'm finally doing it. Then something terrible later in the day happens. The dreadful slippery slope. Because I'm at a new low weight, I allow myself to have a little bit more, then a little bit more, then just a bite more, until I'm desperately trying to control my cravings. The scale goes up the next day, and I feel the opposite of what I felt the day before: upset, disappointed, shame. And the vicious cycle begins. Why do I keep sabotaging my weight loss journey?
Wow. Such a seemingly simple situation.
One we can all relate to. Hunger.
Right? But yeah. Oh, but then it can hit your mindset in a way that you really weren't expecting. You think, okay, I visualize myself waking up one morning, I jump on the scale, and ta-da! I see the number that I was looking for. Maybe that's a forever number. Maybe it's a shorter term goal. Maybe it's a new decade that you've been waiting to break into. Maybe it's a new century mark, right? And the bigger the milestone, or the longer you've been trying to do it, or the longer it's been since you've seen it, then the bigger that emotional feeling can be behind it. And so that can be good if we use that to fuel ourselves and to fuel our decisions during that day. Or unfortunately, as Monica's implying here, we can be used by it, almost like some wiggle room just came in, some emotional and some mental wiggle room that then leads to decisions that basically end up self-sabotaging, like Monica just said. And you might not even think about it in the moment like I'm self-sabotaging, but regardless of how you kind of categorize it, the same thing can happen, which is all of a sudden you're making decisions that you wouldn't have planned to.
Yeah, and let's just talk from a physiological standpoint, what's happening. And we can remove that guilt, shame from it. Now, if you're truly just saying, you know what, screw it, I quit, I'm flipping off the on-off light switch of that diet mentality, and you're like, I'm just going to go hog wild on a buffet, or If you're truly making that conscious decision, then this doesn't typically apply.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to take what your body is telling you in terms of the hormonal signals and the hunger cues, and we need to be able to figure out how to manage it with the life when life is lifing, with the stress, right? So everybody went back to school recently. Everybody got a little bit of congestion. My son ended up having his first like angry ear in over 3 years. So he was up one night, then I was up with him the other night, and then we woke up and one of the dogs had a bathroom issue, and then the school uniform that was supposed to be ready for that morning wasn't ready, and then my wife was late and I was late, and I was like, man, the old me would have been like, we're going to Starbucks, we're getting a quad espresso,
Right.
and probably, you know, some form of breakfast treat.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come home and I'm going to continue the caffeine train because I'm underslept. And then I'm going to need the pick me up in the late afternoon. And then that's going to lead to me probably saying, you know what? Let's say it's dinner Wednesday, breakfast for dinner on Wednesdays for our family. You know what? Instead of eating the eggs and sausages, I'm going to go and have the pancakes and syrup and butter and all the other stuff. So it's going to allow me to, just because of the life stress, the stuff that happened combined with the poor sleep, I'm going to be a lot less, I'm going to have a lot less willpower, right, in the tank to say no to those things.
You'd be in a dopamine deficit.
Yeah.
And then any quick form of dopamine coming in would be that much more tempting in the moment.
Yeah, and that much more satiating and enjoyable, right? So let's talk about what the physiology is doing. And this is why we focus so much on stress and sleep and lifestyle. Yes, of course, the goal is fat loss and sustainability. But here's what happens. When you are losing weight, right, your body is like, it's like controlled starvation. It activates some pretty serious self-defense systems in the body. There's 3 of them. It's three-pronged. You've got the defend phase. This is going to prevent further weight loss. This is the dreaded plateau, the momentary maintenance, as we like to reframe it as. You've lost some weight, you're staying consistent, maybe a little slippage, and the scale is just kind of bouncing up and down. We'll talk about that in another question that was submitted here in just a few minutes. So you got the defend phase, you got the restore phase. It's going to increase the rate of weight regain once sufficient energy is consumed post weight loss. Or when you go off the rails and you overconsume, your body is going to have a much higher susceptibility to regain that weight. This is what we call the regain train. You lose 20, gain 25, lose 25, gain 30, right?
Or you drop 20, but the last 5, you dropped it over the last, let's say maybe it was a month and a half. But then all of a sudden you see 5 more fly back in 2 weeks,
right?
Or less. Yeah, or just a few days.
That's part of your glycogen restorage. Yeah, that's your body's defense mechanism. Then the third part is prevent. So this is your body's trying to decrease the probability of losing weight in the future. It's a self-defense mechanism. In the defend phase, you're going through metabolic adaptation. The lowest weight on the scale, this is a new place your body's never been. It's going to fight back like a toddler throwing a tantrum even more. Then you have the restore phase. This is going to be hunger and fat storage, the efficiency between the two and the balance. And then the prevent phase is it's going to be really focused on that number and size of those fat cells. So weight loss in itself awakens the body's defense system in a manner that is persistent, saturated with redundancies, and well focused on the objective of restoring the body's depleted energy reserves. So any strategy to lose weight and lose fat that fails to acknowledge and plan for the emerging metabolic undertones and influence is likely to have little success in facilitated long-term weight reduction. To ensure success, here it is, the regain prevention strategies will likely need to be just as comprehensive, persistent, and redundant, insert boring and dull and mundane, as the biological adaptations they are attempting to counter. So
that's a good way to think about it.
That's the macro. Again, shout out to Fat Loss Forever, Dr. Lane Norton, Peter Baker, right? That's the macro. The micro is now you're in this moment, right, with Monica, and she steps on the scale, and the underlying physiology is three-pronged approach, right, is attacking you underneath the surface. And then lifes. So then you fall into, well, I don't have a lot of willpower right now. My body defense systems are working against me. So I'm just going to have a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And
Mm.
her words were the dreadful slippery slope.
Well, right. You know where it starts, though. If you describe that as macro, can I get micro for a second here?
I was
Can,
hoping you would, yes.
let's zoom into the moment that you step on the scale and you see the new number, because that's, you know what? Let me back off a step from that. You know you're getting close, right? It's not like you just woke up and all of a sudden the scale moved 8 pounds or something overnight. So you know you're getting close. You know that goal is approaching. And if you've been tracking it on an app, it might say you're 99% towards your goal or something like that, and you're looking for that actual number to hit for the first time on the scale. Prepare yourself mentally before you hop on the scale, where you go, hey, you know what? I've been on track. There's a good chance that I'm going to step on this and I'm going to finally see that number. Let me get myself mentally prepared for it, because let's treat it more like a professional. We're a professional fat loser.
This is a blip, right? Is
Yeah,
what I'm hearing.
it's a
Like
blip.
there's a timeline here. This is just a blip.
Yeah. Let's say I'm a professional fat loss expert here, rather than I'm spinning the wheel on The Price is Right, or that I'm a lottery winner that I just happen to fall just backwards into this number on the scale, like I just won the lottery. So if I look at it more like, okay, I'm about to clock in, clock out like a professional would. I'm about to see a number on the scale, which might be this end goal, quote unquote. It's felt like an end goal. It's not an end goal, right? Obviously, but that might be how it feels. So let me prepare myself for that. So what if I see the number? If I see the number, okay, great. It's still just another day. Today is not the day that I give up on my fat loss efforts. Today's not the day that I stop being the disciplined, structured, lifestyle faster that I was yesterday. Today's not the day that everything changes. Today, I just might see a new number on the scale, okay? And so that being said, if I do, great, it's still gonna be business as usual. If I don't, okay, it's still gonna be business as usual. I'm still gonna take the next action after that. And this doesn't have to be a long, drawn out process. This could be 10 seconds or 30 seconds of just like, okay, let me just calm myself a little bit, detach myself a little bit emotionally from what might happen on the scale here, and then let me just get the reading, okay? So then I can go about my day. I think that's a good way to kind of set myself up for this, so that it's not just like oh my gosh, like you feel like you just hit the jackpot on the slot machine, and then all of a sudden the lights go off, and then streamers come from the heavens, and all kinds of craziness just ensues inside your mind, like a dopamine rush, right?
So when we're looking at this big picture, we like to say this: when then planning.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first time you've been at a new low. So don't expect to hit a home run on your first swing at the plate.
Okay.
Even in a perfect scenario where the bad thing happens, the stress happens, you get the call from school to pick up your kid, somebody, whatever it is, right? I woke up to a dog accident on the floor for some odd known reason. Like, okay, this is great. Yep. All right.
Yep. Nice
Whatever
way to
it
start
is,
the day.
whatever that trigger, that cue is, just know that this is the first time you've been here. So the guilt, shame is not something we should be. I say this to my kids: is shame is not from God. It is we're trying to teach them like how they should self-confidence, how they should feel about themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like shame is not something that it comes very prevalent. It's very prevalent in the weight loss regain cycle, especially if you're stepping on the scale every day. But it's a fleeting feeling. It's an emotion. The action you take from that emotion is then when we are now getting the reward, which is the slippery slope. So giving yourself grace in the fact that when this is brand new to you, this is uncharted territory.
Physiologically and psychologically.
Physiologically and psychologically. Yes, the deck is stacked against you, or DAC, if you put both words together.
Right.
The deck and stacked. It's stacked against you. So
that's bad.
Right? When then planning. So when that stuff happens in the later in the day, what are you going to do? So a proactive plan would be, oh, I'm at a new low. let me insulate myself from myself and let me have a protein-paced small meal early in the day to then mitigate the slippery slope later in the day. Because as the day goes on, our insulin sensitivity goes down, willpower goes down, fatigue goes up, blood sugar management goes down, and you're more likely. So first of all, I want to encourage you and anyone that's been in this situation, you're not broken. Do we have stuff to work on? Yeah, absolutely. But it's that initial emotion. So when then planning, when something like this happens, just to the point of the excerpt I read earlier, the quote was, it's redundant, right? It's the redundancy of the action you take.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can get better at making the redundancy part of our habit or how we respond to the situation, now we're talking about long-term sustainability.
Yeah, and then to get one more layer of redundancy, almost think about it like a bookend. So if you mentally prepare before you step on the scale, as you're getting closer and closer to some number that has an emotional meaning for you, then also think about later on in the day, Scott, as you were talking about, think about an opportunity so that if you did hit a new number, if you did achieve a goal today, then great. Then what way could you give yourself some dopamine hits from that? How could you reward yourself that has nothing to do with the kitchen?
Not just abstain and remove, but replace.
Yeah. Yeah. So could you reward yourself? Could you get a little bit creative today so you can acknowledge the fact that you achieved a big goal? Because that's great. It's freaking fantastic. And you're probably going to be the only one that knows or cares or is going to celebrate. But so, what if you carved out just a little chunk of time for yourself later on in the day? Because when you do that, like, hey, this is how I'm going to celebrate this win. Then you don't feel like you necessarily have to go into the pantry or the fridge to look for the celebration. Because you acknowledged it and you did something, good for yourself as you achieve the goal that doesn't then go against the goal, right? That's the trouble with the very short-sightedness of the dopamine that comes from the kitchen, is that oftentimes those kind of rewards actually go against our long-term goals. So I'm not saying don't ever, give into, something that sounds really good in the kitchen, but at the same time, if it's our only source of reward, then it's really kind of an imbalanced reward as far as your fasting lifestyle and your long-term health and metabolic goals go.
So we're going to transition to Emily's question here because it's related. It's plateau related. Mm-hmm. But the physiology connection point between Monica's question and situation and this is true, is that there's something called the body fat set point. Mm-hmm. So that each individual person has a level of body fat where their body naturally sits, and the body defends that level in an attempt to maintain it. Everyone has a different set point. So, for instance, if you're a 190-pound man and have weighed the same for over a decade and your body fat's been sitting at 18%, it's safe to say that your body's pretty much a fan of that.
Right.
So knowing that there's physiology working underneath the surface makes the psychology of the decisions we make in response to the situations and the actions we take that much easier to understand and know, okay, I'm not broken. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I just need a little bit better plan on how I'm going to move forward and how I respond in those moments. So this question that came in from Emily is, hey, I'm 2 weeks into my journey. I've had amazing results with a 7-pound loss in the first week. It's the end of, that's incredible.
Yeah, right. Way to go.
It's the end of the week too, and the scale has not moved again. Mm-hmm. Any suggestions? I'm working through the podcast. I'm episode 52. I'm utilizing a 24 method with my window in the evening. I've also read Dr. Fung's book. Please help.
Okay, so 20-hour fast, 4-hour nutrition opportunity. Okay, that's good. I like the compartmentalization
in the evening.
Yeah, so I'm going to assume that that's what Emily did during the first week as well, to see that 7-pound drop. So Emily, that's fantastic. Way to get going here, and congratulations on the win. So don't necessarily expect that you're just going to see continual movement in the scale necessarily. Okay, and then
well, here's the thing, Tommy. Yeah. To that point, we don't know if you've got 50, 100, 150, or 20 pounds to lose.
True. Very true.
The more you have to lose, the bigger these swings will be and more volatile they'll be in the beginning for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And whatever you were doing 3 weeks ago, how different that was from a compartmentalized 20-hour fast with 4-hour nutrition window. Yep. Like you basically through the car into reverse on the highway, potentially going a completely different direction depending on what you were doing 3 weeks
Yep.
ago. And that can be a big source for that immediate drop, or whoosh on the scale, as we call it.
Yep.
Right.
Because
So
when
just
you
a little
go low
perspective.
carb or you start fasting, you're bringing insulin down. So then the glycogen stores get depleted. You don't need as much water. So your body, you'll see that initial,
Hmm.
water, air quotes, water weight loss.
Yeah.
Right now is the key of staying consistent. Right. So I would
Hmm.
actually grab for you, Emily, the blueprint to fasting for fat loss
Yeah.
and look at the different schedules that we have in there and use one of those this upcoming week.
Hmm.
The second thing is, if you've now, this is a very short. I am not putting this in the category of a plateau
Right.
or
Right.
a
Right.
body's fat set point or any of that.
Yeah.
Right? It's not there yet. You haven't. It hasn't been long enough.
Yeah.
Okay. But you simply could shift your window earlier in the day.
Mm.
That could also be another lever you could pull that could get the scale moving again. But don't stop now, because you are now glycogen depleted, you're primed and ready to roll.
Yeah.
We just need to move a couple of those variables in your time of when you eat, right? And then giving it a little more time to continue the process.
Yeah, you're going to see in the blueprint some of the details for how we jump into fast cycling, which you've found yourself glycogen depleted. Now you get to start actually tapping into some of those long-term fat stores, and we want to continue that momentum. Absolutely. So use the 7-pound weight loss here as a motivator for you've absolutely gotten the process started with a bang.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So many people out there listening are like, yes, please.
Right. And for everyone listening, if you haven't seen a 7-pound drop either ever or it's been a long time, that's okay. And it might be a very good sign that you're not repleting those glycogen stores in like a big kind of volatile fashion. That's
Yeah.
okay. That's actually key to better, more consistent fat loss with fast cycling. So just keep the momentum going and know that the fat loss now happens much slower. Not to say that you won't see it on the scale, but yeah, play around with a few of these variables, like Scott said. Grab the blueprint to fasting for fat loss, and I think you're going to see some more scale movement here in the very near future.
Yep, absolutely. Keep up the momentum. That's the
Yeah,
key, right? Keep up the
absolutely.
momentum. We have a very tactical question here. This came in from Gary Lynn
Hmm.
from supplements, and then we'll go to another supplement / alcohol / potential plateau question
Ooh.
or maintenance question. We got a couple of those coming up. Do you take things like berberine, creatine, other supplements during longer fast, or do you wait until you're
Mhm.
back to a nutrition day, meaning a day if you're doing longer extended fasts and you have a day, or maybe you're in a fasting window and you don't break your fast until later that day? Do you take supplements?
Hmm.
And my answer is yes, because I'm taking those supplements to help manage blood sugar, stress response,
Hmm.
vitamin D, for its immune response, and vitamin C and all of those wellness supplements. Yes, I take. Now I don't take a protein shake during my fasting window,
Hmm.
right? I'm not adding in like a protein smoothie or any of those things to get that type of supplement in. But when it comes to these wellness maintenance type supplements,
Yeah.
yeah, I absolutely take them every day, because if I skip days, I forget.
Right. I don't want those skip days either, so I do as well. I'll span them out potentially a little bit more on an empty stomach, just because you can be stomach sensitive
That's the
potentially,
one consideration
right?
here. Is sometimes, specifically women, taking certain supplementation, you might get a little bit
Hmm.
nauseous or upset stomach. So in that case, yes, plan accordingly so you can take them when you break your fast or on a day that you're not doing extended fasting.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, just like you, Scott, I don't like to miss a day, because that kind of it hits the momentum of, yes, this is something that I do every day. If I have to manage it as far as like meal timing, hey, and then I got to go over to this particular cabinet. No, I just
I'm
like it
gonna
all.
forget.
You're right. I just like for it all to be part of my just first few minutes in the morning routine. I
Yep.
just kind of gather up the things that I need, and then it's off to the races on with my day.
Yep, absolutely. So great question, Gary Lynn. Moving on to the next question. There is a supplement component here, so trying to keep things organized and orderly.
Hmm.
This came in from Patty. I've been listening to your podcast and I'm trying to do the OMAD, but I like my wine with dinner. Is that ruining my efforts? We'll come back to that in a second. I drink dry red or white I work out 4 to 5 times a week. I have no problem going all day with only coffee and water. I do miss my BCAAs. So I put them in a protein shake before I eat my dinner. Should I be limiting my calories? I don't pig out, and I try to keep it to a 2 to 3 hour window. So that's true definition of time restricted eating. Would love your advice. I love the podcast. I'm 57 years young. I love that and want to lose about 30 pounds sooner than later.
Awesome.
Sooner rather than later. I love that as well. Thanks for your encouragement and advice. So,
wow.
She had a protein shake question. I love the idea of starting your nutrition opportunity. We call it an eating window or nutrition opportunity when you're breaking your fast with protein. So I love that. It's the best macronutrient out there for satiety. It's great for lean muscle growth. It's absolutely, at a 57-year young female, you need more protein to stimulate the same muscle growth as you transition into menopause. It's just a physiological thing that happens. So yes, I love that idea. I would actually look into an essential amino acid versus a branched chain amino acid. You're going to get a better efficiency in stimulating muscle growth, BCA versus EAA. But yes, to your question, absolutely. Like starting your fasting window with protein, 100% agree. Love it. I do it. Absolutely love the recommendation. Now,
love that.
You're working out 4 to 5 days a week. You got 30 pounds to lose sooner rather than later. So, to your question, I'm doing OMAD, but I like my wine with dinner. Is that ruining my efforts? You can tell by the tone of my voice that you may not like the response. Now, everything in moderation. We're not going to take liberties here and say, well, if you're having a bottle of wine versus a glass of wine, obviously that is undermining your results. Okay? Here's why. Can a glass of wine with your eating window be part of your sustainable lifestyle for weight loss? Yes, it can. Here's the reality. I gave up drinking a couple years ago. Never something I thought I would say. Irish upbringing, college years, restaurant business for over a decade, craft beer, date nights, family, social, society, just everything I was doing at those times. It was just part of my journey, of my lexicon, of how I live my life. I have since given that up. People have asked, they've put in the reviews on how did you get your mindset right for that? And honestly, it was just a decision one day where I'm like, yeah, this just isn't really worth it anymore for me. So let's talk big picture on what alcohol is doing and its effect on weight loss. So when you drink, there is a time and dosage component. So once you drink, alcohol then moves up the priority list for your metabolism over your fat, right? Because we don't want to talk about weight loss. We want to talk about fat loss. So
even over carbohydrates, everything.
Right. Over everything.
It's a short-term emergency.
It's a short-term emergency because there's a toxic component to it, right? When it breaks down into its constituents, your body's like, ooh, I got to get this out of here.
Yeah.
So what that does is it temporarily stops the body's fat-burning process and potentially slows down your progress. So we have a rule. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the result to change, that's the definition of insanity. So something has to change. And you asked about counting calories. Should I limit my calories? If you're not losing weight, you're in an energy balance. That will be skewed by insulin and hormones, and it will also be slowed down by alcohol, just from a physiological standpoint.
It'll also be slowed down if the alcohol's coming in at night. Any amount of alcohol, and this is also dose dependent for sure, will then disrupt your sleep efficiency going into that evening, which then determines metabolic efficiency and metabolic rate the next day, right? So literally if my sleep isn't as good tonight because of the alcohol that I had tonight, and that will have an effect, then tomorrow's fat burn is less efficient. So even with the same fasting hours and the same food involved. So optimal, it's bringing down the potential impact for those fasting hours.
And alcohol also lowers inhibitions and increased cravings, leading to overeating or less healthy choices, even if not pigging out, to your point, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
So
there's that too.
here's another chink in the armor with alcohol is hormones, metabolism, and age. So as women age, specifically, your liver now metabolizes alcohol less efficiently. So that's
Hmm.
going to amplify the metabolic effects and the hormone regulation, especially post-menopause.
Hmm.
So moderate intake of, like, let's say 1 glass a day for women within that 2 to 3 hour window that you're talking about is generally safe. But reducing the frequency or quantity will absolutely accelerate your results if your fat loss has stalled.
Hmm. That's a good way to think about it, because then that leaves it squarely, Patty, for you. That decision is squarely yours to determine how your results are coming right now versus all of the variables that you have to to make your own decisions with. And so we're absolutely not saying that you need to give up wine in order to hit your 30-pound fat loss goals.
Yep.
At the same time, you have a set of variables each night that you're kind of dealing with, and you can take those pieces and move them around, pull the levers, as you wish based on your long-term goals.
Yep. So here's an overview. Metabolic rate, slightly slowed with wine. Fat burning, inhibited temporarily. Hormone metabolism, less efficient. Caloric
Mhm.
intake, adds calories, right?
Yeah, liquid
I mean,
calories are
liquid
yeah,
calories,
they're
right?
quick and they're not satiating.
Exercise recovery, reduces it the following day. Metabolic flexibility, reduces it the following day. Cravings impulsivity can increase after drinking, right? Is the decrease in inhibition. And long-term health, it can create a cascade of chronic low-level inflammation.
Mm.
The impact of those things on weight loss for metabolic rate is mildly negative. Fat burning, negative if frequent. Hormone metabolism may worsen some symptoms if you're experiencing menopausal or postmenopausal symptoms. For the caloric intake, it's mild, right? As long as we're not talking about multiple glasses, right? If we're talking about 1 glass, then it's 120 to 180 calories, right? So that's
Mm.
really like a negligible effect. Exercise recovery, negative effect. Cravings impulsivity, that can slow progress. And then the long-term health benefit as well. So what I would encourage you here is you're doing so many things right. It feels like this might be a lever that you don't want to pull. But what I would do
Mm.
is I would compartmentalize this to not nightly, but like if you want to then put it at the end of the week where
Mhm.
you have the ability to get more sleep, right? To insulate that next day effect. So go from an everyday thing to a less frequent thing, if that makes sense, Tommy.
I think that makes great sense. And one other reframe would be to think about this as a 2 to 3 hour window. Like you've outlined a really well thought out kind of like, hey, this is how I'm doing it. These are what my priorities are.
Yep.
This is how I like to eat. I'm even putting the protein in here, prioritizing that. I do like the glass of wine. So, I want that to be part of my plan too. And you're trying to keep this all within a 2 to 3 hour window. So I want to commend you because you're the time restriction, you're really leveraging time here. Okay.
Yep.
But I want to reframe one or two things real quick, which is the fact that as you go throughout the day, your metabolic efficiency goes down as the day goes on, so that when you think about a 2 to 3 hour nutrition opportunity window each night, this with kind of a protein fast breaker and maybe a glass or two of wine in it, this might be a great sustainable maintenance way that you live most days. I mean, this can be a great way to be in an insulin and caloric balance to maintain your results for a long period of time and maybe for life for you. So that being said, if right now you want to be in a fat loss phase, but you feel like you're kind of stuck, it might be because this is a great maintenance tool for you in and of itself. So think about right now could have been like a bit of a momentary maintenance. And so understanding what the variables are and how you want to pull these levers, then this can help you, kind of get back into the fat burning train, how you want to kind of accelerate that process. And then maybe a few nights a week, you have it like this. This is your plan. And that those are basically like maintenance days. And then a few days of the week, you're doing it a bit differently because those are more squarely like fat burning days, and I want to
Yep.
treat those differently too. So that's a good way to think about this, so that you can kind of have a good balance within your week.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we have another question. We have two left. Anne from the UK. Hey, Scott and Tommy, love your podcast, which are great help on my journey to better metabolic health. I have a question for a future Q&A session. Perfect. I like to maintain an OMAD lifestyle to keep insulin at bay. I'm postmenopausal and do not need to lose weight, but try to fast for 48 hours once a week to prevent gaining it.
All right.
When I do this, I invariably have difficulty getting to sleep, feeling much colder than usual with a general feeling of stress, perhaps due to higher cortisol levels. I wonder if the good done by the extra hours fasting is being undone by the poor sleep. I would be interested to know if any of your other listeners have the same experience. Thanks for all your good work and keeping up with the science data, RE fasting.
Interesting. Okay, good question. So whenever we get into the what are the exact meal timings, one thing we like to keep in mind is that just pushing for a few extra fasted hours, but pushing that meal into the later time, it's not worth the extra hours to get into a later meal. And so when you think about doing something like this, where you're hopping into a 48-hour fast, then I'm assuming that's going from dinner one day to a dinner 2 days later is kind of the typical cycle there.
Yep. Most common.
Yeah, I mean, I love adding in a flame day once a week as kind of a maintenance flex, kind of keep that muscle, that fasting muscle strong, and then also be able to, make sure that you're spending a good amount of time, more time than you would if you were eating every single day. Now you've had some time where you're getting into some higher levels of ketosis. You're squarely in fat burning mode. So that's a really good thing. So as she alludes to here, she's feeling that transition, and it's not lining up with the sleep cycle very well. So a couple of tactical things that you could do would be to move the meal before you get into that longer fast, move that one a little bit earlier so that you're kind of shifting the hours of that transition. And that can be a really helpful thing, so that instead of going from dinner and then 2 days later to dinner, you could do lunch or a late lunch, and then even when you go to break your fast, you could do that at a little bit of a different time too. You could break that earlier in the day. So maybe it's well, that wouldn't prevent the sleep problem though. I
want to talk about that in a second.
That first night sleep problem, but taking your meal before the fast started and then making that earlier in the day, that might help with that transition getting into your sleep cycle. But also the meal composition there. If you make that meal a little bit smaller and lower in carbohydrates, what that's also going to do is kind of smooth that transition from carbohydrate burning into fat burning before you get more towards that sleep cycle. So that could be really helpful too. And even the meal before the fast could be helpful too, if that was also a little bit smaller and lower in carbohydrates.
So if we're looking at the total benefit to the root of the question here, is the benefit undone, right? That's ultimately what she's asking. So if fasting regularly leads to poor sleep and elevated cortisol, which it's cortisol short term. Cortisol is good. It gets a bad rap. We need cortisol. We'd be dead without it. So you have this short-term stress on the HPA axis, our stress response. So if fasting regularly leads to poor sleep and elevated cortisol, some of the metabolic benefits will be diminished in the long term. So recovery, hormonal balance, and insulin sensitivity all rely on quality sleep. So chronic sleep, we know, can increase the stress hormones and undermine fasting's positive outcomes, which is why we don't recommend doing extended fasts if you're at maintenance all that often. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. So the fact that you're at maintenance, Ann, and you're doing an OMAD lifestyle, and you're trying to keep insulin at bay, I don't see any reason why you need a 48-hour fast every week.
Could Ann also maybe already be at a caloric and an insulin deficit the rest of the week? Like if in a strict OMAD sense, if these are maybe 30 to 60 minutes, is that sufficient time to be getting in enough nutrition, or might Ann be under consuming and over fasting already? And that's where some of this sleep disturbance is coming from.
Yeah, 100%. So we'll see this in the short term when people are new to fasting and they go to bed the first night without dinner, right? If they've been doing a dinner OMAD, your body needs to get used to this transition, but living in this transition state, not a good long-term plan.
Yeah.
So prolonged fasting definitely stimulates HPA axis in the short term. That's the stress hormone, sleeplessness, restlessness, feeling cold. Now, occasionally that's okay, but we don't want that to be the norm. So for you, I honestly feel like, to Tommy's, what he was alluding to there is, as long as the rest of your week is pretty on point, the 80% rule, right? And the scale's not going up 3 to 5 pounds, and then you do this 48-hour fast, and then it goes back down, and then you rinse, repeat week over week. With these secondary, disruptions in sleep and cortisol, I definitely don't recommend that. So I would honestly like to see you use like more of a 24 to 30 hour, or maybe even a 36-hour fast once a week. So like breakfast to the following day dinner, right? Or dinner to the following day breakfast. So you're still going to get from 30 to 48 hours, you're not going to get that much additional benefit from an insulin and blood sugar perspective. In my opinion, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So protect your sleep at all costs. So using 24, 30, 36-hour fast once a week, back off of that 48 hours. You don't need it. You're at maintenance. You don't need to be doing that every single week. Maybe once a month, a 48-hour fast or an extended fast. But I would love to see you shorten that window and make sure that you're getting quality nutrition in every day, so you're not having this HPA axis activation. Most importantly, the sleep disturbance.
Yeah, then if you're only doing it once a month, you don't really have to worry about that sleep disturb. Like it would be very occasional at that point. But then you could still check that box.
I can get sleep disturbances once a month without even fasting, with the season of life that we're in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The fire alarm goes off in the middle of the night. We have a power outage, a kid's sick, or you're not feeling well, or husband snoring, or, whatever.
Right.
Like there's a whole bunch of reasons. So I would take that off the table. So hopefully that answers your question, in. But I would definitely reduce that frequency of that extended fast and prioritize that sleep protection at all costs, especially if you're at maintenance, which she is. So one last question here that came in. I find when I do, this is going to be talking about postprandial glucose. So what are some of the fasting optimizers or lifestyle things that we like to do to help manage blood sugar, hunger cues, hormones, and protect sleep? Is we recommend a postprandial or post-meal walk. So we had this question come in that said, I find when I do my after-meal walk that my glucose stays even during the walk, but then goes up when I'm finished, as if the walk simply delayed the glucose rise. Is that what should be expected? It does not seem to decrease response, but it simply delays it. So
interesting, yeah.
With this case, we don't know, because we don't have the other tests that we should do here, is what's the response without the walk with the same meal at the same time of day?
Yeah.
Because my guess is that you have reduced that glucose spike in both cases. But what we want to talk about is that area under the curve, right, Tommy?
Yeah. So I've seen the same thing many, many times whenever I was wearing a continuous glucose monitor. And the level of insight that you get is really good. Sometimes the results can be a little bit unexpected. But the cool thing is then you can do a little split testing or a little A/B testing and say, okay, on the same fasting time, with the same meal, with that same walk, intensity and duration, what did I see? And you can compare the curves, and that's where you get some of the really interesting data. So it can be a little bit unexpected that, normally postprandial glucose rise, you might see, let's say for you particularly, it might be a 40-point rise. But then, and that happens within maybe 30 or 60 minutes after your meal. But then if you go on a good walk afterwards, after that meal, then maybe it delays it by an extra 30 or 45 minutes. But then, so looking at that, you want to pay attention to, was the overall peak, did it go as high? And then also, did the rise, did it stay outside of your normal range or where you were before the meal? Did it stay there for as long, or did it stay there for a shorter amount of time? Because overall, the amount of carbohydrates that you brought in and the amount of short-term fuel that you brought into your body from that meal, there was only so much fuel that you brought in. So typically, one of the benefits of the post-meal walk is that it gives you an opportunity to actually burn through some of that fuel, which you wouldn't have been otherwise if you just, maintained a sedentary nature after that meal. So it does burn through net some of the fuel that you brought in. And so typically you're going to see a difference if you actually compare the area under the curve, compare the actual curves, and like if you colored in the area underneath that curve and you compared it one way versus the other, you would normally see a reduction, which would be a very good thing. But even if you didn't, then you still have a benefit, which is there is net insulin sensitivity and resensitization that's happening. You're having a better insulin response. Even if the blood sugar shows you no change, no improvement at all, your insulin response that you can't measure in real time is better because of what's happening within your blood sugar systems and actually sensing it by the pancreas. So the insulin response will be better, which means then your sleep will be better, the scale will reward you, and you're going to spend more time in long-term fat burning rather than just carbohydrate burning. So you can get back to fat burning faster because of a lower insulin response. Because remember, insulin is the gatekeeper for fat storage.
So overall, the delayed response with post-meal walking refers to both lowering the early peak and postponing the occurrence, which ultimately results, to your point, Tommy, in improved glucose control and reduction in those long-term metabolic risk factors. So, because during walking, your skeletal muscle is going to rapidly uptake the glucose from the blood to fuel the activity. That's going to blunt the early and sharp rise in blood sugar, right, which is going to reduce that area under the curve. And it also redistributes the glucose metabolism. So while walking, it reduces the spike, returns your blood glucose to baseline because the glucose is absorbed more gradually after you're done walking. So this delay, the time it takes to reach peak glucose, spreading the absorption over a longer time frame, that's going to reduce that total glucose elevation.
Yeah,
now we're talking about a small real subset of people here who are managing their blood sugar, wearing a CGM. So if you don't want to get into the weeds here, really ultimately there is massive benefit to a post-meal walk in your blood sugar, in your energy utilization, in your digestion, in the way you feel, especially if it was a heavier carbohydrate meal, right? Or maybe a more indulgent meal.
Or it's later in the day.
Later in the day, getting out and moving, you're going to feel that much better. And ultimately, that's going to motivate you to keep going. So that's what we want ultimately.
Yeah, think about the distribution of all of the carbohydrates and all of the fuel being like within your visceral organs, close by, easy to deposit a little bit more visceral fat that we don't want. Like that post-meal walk literally gets to take the short-term fuel that you brought in and redistribute it to where you want it, which is in your skeletal muscles. So anything you can do to activate some muscle cells that are then going to soak up some of that glucose and other short-term fuels is a huge benefit. And that's why all of the data unequivocally shows that you have major benefits for a postprandial walk. So it's absolutely doing it. It's absolutely worth doing it. Even if you only have 10 minutes, go do that. If you have 30 or 45, great, go do that. All the better. But whatever you can fit in after the meal is fantastic. And don't let any of the CGM data discourage you, even if it just looks like you're just delaying the process, Steve. So keep going with those walks, okay?
Yep, absolutely. And my wife loved these conversations because she's like, if we had to put a top 5 list of things she'd want us to do as a family, it would be go for walks.
Yep. Yeah.
And I don't like family walks. I like individual by myself alone podcast walks.
Right.
Right. I do love my family. I love my kids. I love my wife. But a post-meal walk with an 8, 6, and 3-year-old is not much of a walk.
Right.
It's more of like herding cats or chasing chickens around. And it's like, okay, how much walking are we actually doing here? So she will be happy to hear this episode and the fact that the post-dinner walk is hugely beneficial.
Yeah.
And you know what? She's probably right. If she hears this. You're welcome. So as we wrap up today's episode, thank you all for submitting your questions. Appreciate y'all being on this journey with us. If you're looking for more support, head to the show notes, grab the Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss, take the fasting quiz, join the next challenge. The last one of the 2025 calendar is coming up. Aptly placed, strategically placed right before the Thanksgiving holiday. So, Tommy, I appreciate the conversation as always, man, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.